Hello and welcome back to Clownfish TV. It is me, Geeky Sparkles, and it is just me for this video. Kneon is elsewhere, but I think he'll be back for us to do a couple of videos later on. So we're going to talk about The View and Joy Behar, because somehow Joy thinks that under Trump, America is worse than the civil rights movement. It's worse than during the Cuban Missile Crisis. It's far worse now than ever because, you know, Trump. I shit you not. I'm not supposed to say that early. I crap you not. All right. So before we get into it any further, please like and subscribe. If you do, I'll give you a woohoo, and we're going to talk about it. So I saw this today and I had to laugh because I mean, even her co-hosts are calling her out at this point because they're like, for heaven's sakes. So The View hosts, this is on Decider, clash after Joy Behar says she's skeptical America will survive Trump's presidency. And one of her co-hosts was like, it's only Tuesday, Joy. Can we not start there? I mean, they're getting so sick of it because The View as of late, in the last few years especially, has been constant. Like, you know, politics, far leftist agenda. Which is funny because before Trump ran for president on the Republican ticket, they were kissing his butt. They were asking if he'd run. They just loved him until, you know, he didn't do what they wanted. And now, you know, he's the worst thing ever. So apparently, on The View, which I'm assuming was today because it's Tuesday, said she sparked debate because she shared a shockingly somber prediction of what's to come under President Trump. If you guys think that we can survive another 3.5 years of this, I think you're delusional, she said. Every day there's some nihilistic thing. Which is what? Then they said they just finished discussing his recent appearance during this military summit and all this other stuff. And Sarah Haynes said to her, it's only Tuesday, Joy. Can we not start there? Because this is getting ridiculous. I mean, even the people there on the show with her are getting sick of her shit. But she continued, because she never shuts up. That would be glorious. I hate to be Debbie Downer. God, you're Debbie Downer most of the time. I think you actually like it. With a name like Joy, you're awfully depressing. But every day this guy is undoing something we value. What? What's he undoing that you value? Every day is a shock and awe here. And I, for one, am skeptical that we will survive this. Survive what? Like, what's he undoing that you're not going to survive? Because I keep seeing this, you know, oh, we got to protect women's rights. I'm a woman. I've yet to see any of my rights violated. Oh, we got to continue to keep civil rights. Yeah, and no one's not doing civil rights. It's like, what are you talking about? The only rights that you're going to argue is, oh my gosh, the illegals are being deported. And it's like, well, they're not supposed to be here anyway. And if you come in legally, by all means, hey, welcome, come on in. You know, high five. If you get your citizenship, extra high five. Welcome to the party because you came in legally. There's a difference. And I'm also still sick about the fact that all the money they are giving people that were coming in illegally, either with healthcare, with freebies or whatever. I know that there was cases where people were getting disability when they were coming in. And then my brother recently just got it. My brother has had some issues. I'm not going to talk about it here, but trust me, he cannot work. And he wasn't always like this. Things happened. It was some physical injuries. Things happened. He cannot work now. And he hates it because he's one that would want to, but he really can't. He had to fight to get it. But if he had come in from another country and said, oh, my back hurts, he would have gotten it handed to them. And then they're like, you know, he's taking away things we value. What, freedom of speech? Because let's be honest, that's probably what this is about. There's always been freedom of speech. And you all sat there and cheered when other people got canceled because they didn't say what you wanted. Because was it freedom of speech without freedom of consequence? That's what you all said before. I mean, they have snippets of Sonny saying stuff like that, two different stories, depending on who it is, about who should be allowed to speak and who shouldn't. Freedom of speech. You're allowed to have freedom of speech. But freedom of the press and freedom of speech are two different things. And freedom of speech does not mean that you get to say whatever the hell you want and then say stuff that isn't true and then not have to apologize for it. Freedom of speech doesn't mean that you get to say what you want and not be held accountable, but then cheer what other people get canceled for saying something else they said that wasn't even bad. That's not freedom of speech. Freedom of speech isn't when the Biden administration has Google, you know, block people who were putting things up they didn't like about COVID vaccines or, you know, the election or things, and they were told to block them. Now, granted, Google didn't have to say yes, but they did, because I mean, why would you're not going to say no and the administration's telling you to do it? But then they're all yelling about the FCC and and Trump and everything else. About Jimmy Kimmel, and you guys did the same thing. You guys were doing the same thing, but it's okay when you do it. And I'm sitting here like in the middle, and I'm like, any normal, rational person looking at this and looking at all the sides at once is going to be like, what the hell? There is a complete double standard here. If Joy didn't have a double standard, she'd obviously have no standards. And then she goes on, it gets better. So she said, she tried to say, Haynes said, I'm not skeptical. If you need that for me, I do believe that it's going to be okay. And then Sunny, of course, has to get in there. And she said that, Behar must have seen worse under previous presidencies. She grew up during the Cuban Missile Crisis and the Civil Rights era, as did my parents. No, I have not. She responded. She also grew up during World War II. Wait, she was kidding, obviously. But I have not. Bullshit, Joy. Bullshit. You are not going to convince anyone that was around during these times that times now with President Trump are worse than during the Cuban Missile Crisis or the civil rights issues, civil rights era and all that stuff, during the wars and all that. You're not going to convince anyone of this, Joy. You are so full of shit, Joy. Hey, you know what? Back when you were a kid, you wouldn't have been allowed to have a show like this, Joy. You're so full of crap. There's no comparison. Go talk to anybody who's as old as Joy or older that's lived through this stuff, and they're going to tell you the same thing. Hey, whether they like Trump or not, they're not going to say, yeah, so much worse now. Hell no. Hell no, Joy. Yeah, it's kind of sucky, that's gotten to a place where we have to send military into cities, but they're doing it because they're out of control in the cities, and people are supposed to run this stuff aren't taking care of it. They just aren't. I'm sorry, but we're back to like political assassinations and shit now. So I guess in that regard, it's about as bad as when you were a kid. It's insane. The fact that she said that with the civil rights movement and the Cuban Missile Crisis was less bad than now. If you need any reason to believe this woman, if you didn't already know, that she's about as disingenuous as anything, this ought to prove it. People were saying Haynes and that Griffin said that they're hopeful. And then she's like, they were all dealt with by presidents who were not in the business of destroying the country and destroying the Constitution. Where? Okay, let's talk about that. Destroying the country. Let's let all the illegals in. And then let's put a strain on the taxpayers to pay for them. Okay? Yeah, because that's so much better. Constitution, it's all boiling down to her freedom of speech bullshit. And again, no one took her freedom of speech away. But as you have pointed out and on your show before, that just because you have freedom of speech doesn't mean that it's okay for you to say stuff. You were celebrated when people were canceled for things. But now that it might come for you. Now that it might come for you, you got a problem. We have not that long ago, they made Sunny Hostin walk back illegal. They had to read a legal memo on The View because what she said, because it wasn't accurate. And now they're not just allowed to say what they want to say. And that's what this whole thing's about. They just want to say what they want to say, and they're being told they can't. And you're encroaching on my liberties, and you're encroaching on the Constitution because, the FCC might take me off the air if I say stuff that isn't true and presented as fact on a show that's, considered on the news, ABC News Network, even though I would say it's a commentary show. So you're allowed to have your opinion, I would believe. And I would say it would be wrong to take them off the air for comments that were clearly opinion. That being said, they push the line constantly. It's ridiculous. She goes on, we always had presidents who followed the law, including Nixon, as bad as he was. He had respect for the Constitution. But they can't. Where is the Constitution being invalidated? Where? Because I can think of a lot of examples where you could argue under any president where there's issues where people would question the Constitution being followed. Other hosts were not so sure about that. Yeah, any rational person wouldn't be. One chimed in, not all the time, but they ended on a somber note as she quickly threw it to commercial, ending their conversation short. Joy, just shut the fuck up. I don't want to tell you. I'm sorry. I'm so sick of it. You guys have said stuff that was shit so many times. But you were allowed to say it. And I'd argue if you're a commentary show and that's based on opinion, you have the right to say it. The problem is when you present things as fact, which is why Sunny had to read a, correction statement, a legal correction on the air because they didn't want to get sued. Because that's what happens when you are out there saying something that isn't true all the time, is that they can get sued. If it's an opinion, a commentary, like I would argue the View is more commentary, so it's going to be harder there than it would be on something that's considered news. That being said, you've got away with saying shit all you wanted. I mean, Whoopi almost got a bakery shut down because she was making comments and making, publicly saying she was assuming that they didn't give her baked goods for reasons that weren't why they didn't. And the woman told her that, we're having, issues with the building and we're trying to get them fixed. And it might be we can't, service what you need. And it's because of, politics or race or whatever. You guys are full of shit. And you're so vile most of the time. Even before Trump was elected, you're just like two-faced and vile. And there's clips of like all these people like saying one thing and then saying something else when it applies to them years later. Joy Behar supposedly did blackface. I don't know if that's true or not, but they said that, that's okay. It's okay when she does it. I'm just so tired of the double standard. But trying to say that current year is worse than when she grew up as a kid is just ludicrous and ridiculous. I think it's going to be some growing pains because there's so many drastic differences between the left and the right at this point that I was talking about this with Kneon earlier. It's like they're two completely different ideologies. Like they used to have some common ground, but now they're so far removed. And most of us in the middle, even find things we agree with on both sides and things we don't agree with on both sides. But a lot of the people that are the extremes, and especially towards one side, they are so politically pickled that there's never going to be a way that anybody can come together to even work together anymore. Because when I was younger, you got elected and you compromised, you worked together, and you worked for the people. The citizens, to clarify, not the people that you brought in illegally. The citizens, you worked for the citizens that put you in office, and you did what you could to help them. And sometimes you had to, compromise on what you wanted, but then everybody got some of what they wanted, but not all of what they wanted. And it worked for the best of everyone. And now people are like campaigning for elections the moment the election's over, and they spend all their time trying to screw the other side, even if they have a good idea. Even if they have a valid point, like let's not tax tips, you're going to screw them over just to cut off your nose to spite your face because they said it. There's no, and people that are out there now making the comments about how this shouldn't be allowed and that shouldn't be allowed, they have clips of them when they're in office because, they're in office and never leave. Term limits. I'm saying that, term limits. That they were saying, like, the things that they're standing against now, they personally said about illegal immigration and everything just a few years ago. And they have them on video. It's insane. And when you get politically pickled to the place where you can't even have rational thought and all you hear in your head is, to toe the party line, toe the party line, toe the party line, you end up this Joy Behar. That's what you end up like. This is what political pickling and constant has to be my way or the highway, double standards, and not compromising and not learning to work together and trying to be as divisive as flipping possible. Joy Behar. That's what you get. So there it is. It is not worse than the Cuban Missile Crisis or civil rights era. I've talked to several people and they're like, that's ridiculous. Even the co-host thought you were being ridiculous. So please like and subscribe, and I will talk to you later. Bye.
For more pop culture news, views, and rants, go to news.clownfishtv.com. That's news.clownfishtv.com.